My name is Nora White. I'm 33 years old, and a few months ago, my ex-fiancé tried to turn my life into a motivational caption. He had no idea that I would turn his personal growth moment into the best thing that ever happened to me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I wire buildings for a living, not fairy lights and mason jars. Actual commercial and residential electrical work. I started pulling Romex at 20 for a cranky master electrician who yelled in all caps and swung a tape measure like it was holy scripture. 10 years later, I've got my master license, a state inspector in my contacts, and a reputation for not cutting corners. I own a small shop, North Rim Electric LLC. Nothing flashy, just a 2-bay unit in an industrial strip, a 16-foot enclosed trailer, a used Chevy Silverado 2500 with ladder racks, and 2 scissor lifts I bought when copper prices made me question my life choices. I track everything in a spreadsheet: receipts, materials, labor, permit fees. Last year, gross revenue was about $228,400. Net, around $96,300. I paid myself $68,000. Not influencer money, but my bills are paid and my tools are mine. I also own a 3-bedroom ranch on the east side. $246,000, 20% down, because I don't enjoy making banks rich. My mortgage with escrow is $1,560. My shop lease is $1,100. I keep a 6-month emergency fund like it's a religious practice. I learned that from my Uncle Ron, who got torn in half by a divorce where he gave up a boat, a cabin, and what felt like his spine. He's fine now, remarried, but he repeats, protect your stuff like it's scripture. So yeah, I keep finances separate. I'd already told my then fiancé, Seth, that if we ever got married, we were getting a prenup. I said it kindly, with a spreadsheet. That's how you know I meant it. We met 3 years ago at a friend's backyard cookout. He was 29 then, 32 now. Dark hair, gym body, corporate casual smile. He worked as an HR coordinator at a medical billing company across town. In the beginning, everything felt normal. He liked that I could fix things. I liked that he had a stable job and wasn't trying to live through his phone camera, or so I thought. We dated for 2.5 years. When you run a shop, free time is a myth with a mustache, but I made it happen. Sunday dog walks with my brown mutt, Ranger, who's convinced geese are federal agents. Tuesday dinners. Saturdays we ran errands, and I carried his IKEA boxes, even though those flat pack instructions are enemy propaganda. We took small road trips to nearby state parks. I surprised him with a weekend at a little A-frame Airbnb one fall. No wild party, just hot chocolate and bad board games. We split checks most of the time because I'm not anyone's ATM. He said he respected that. Then we got engaged. Small ring, my grandma's stone reset, about $800 in custom work. He cried, said yes, and I ugly smiled like a clown. We didn't move in together. I don't play merge everything now, figure out finances later. He kept his 1-bedroom apartment, I stayed in my ranch, and we agreed we'd combine houses closer to the wedding. I still made him a copy of my house key. Practicality wins, and he gave me one to his place. That detail is going to matter. 2 months after the engagement, the thermostat in our relationship ticked up a couple of degrees. He wanted a bigger wedding. He wanted upgraded flowers. He wanted a brand-name photographer with moody tones and 3 assistants. The budget swelled from the $12,000 we'd agreed on to something that sounded suspiciously like $34,000 when he talked. I kept saying no. He started calling me old school in a way that felt less like a compliment and more like an insult wrapped in a joke. Meanwhile, work exploded. From November through March, my main general contractor, Granite Works, had 3 builds going at once. Every one of them needed me in 2 places at once. I was running 60, 70-hour weeks, living on coffee and the emotional support of my label maker. Seth started throwing out lines like, "You're married to your job," and "When we move in, I'll need more balance." Fair. Wanting time with your partner is normal. But then came the subtle stuff. If I suggested a homemade pizza night, he'd send me links to new restaurants with $18 salads and vibes. He said more than once, "When we're married, I don't want to think about bills." That sentence made my spine leave my body. He kept asking about the photographer upgrade after I'd already said no. He mentioned 3 separate times that his coworker's boyfriend bought her a luxury bag just because, like he was waiting for me to salute. I told myself it was normal relationship friction. I ignored the fact that I was explaining compound interest to someone who didn't want to learn math. Uncle Ron, on the other hand, did not ignore it. He just shouted, "Prenup!" every time Seth's name came up, like he was calling a timeout in a playoff game. We scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, Kara, to get the draft drawn up. Seth said, "I trust you," which was sweet and also not an answer. When I explained it wasn't about trust, it was about clarity, his face did that polite shutdown thing. And then Granite Works hit pause. Thursday morning, they called and said all subcontracted work was on hold for 6 to 8 weeks, while a developer sorted funding. On paper, I wasn't laid off, I was paused. But when 90% of your scheduled labor evaporates, that's semantics. I did what you do in the trades. I took a breath, called my crew, shuffled things, and went hunting for other jobs. I had 6 months of business and personal expenses saved. Stressful? Yes. Fatal? No. Seth came over Friday night. I made chicken and roasted potatoes. We watched a dumb competition show where grown adults cried over cake. He barely ate. "How long till you find something?" he asked, eyes stuck to the TV like it offended him. "Could be a few weeks, could be a couple months," I said. "I've got 6 months of runway. I've already started calling past clients and running promos. It'll be fine." He made a face like I said I was going to start selling my organs on Craigslist. I tried to explain how contractor calendars work, how cash flow cycles hit, how I balance jobs between GCs and private clients, how I track payments so I don't float materials for people who pay slow. He nodded like I was speaking hieroglyphics. Then he said he had a headache and left early. Ranger watched him go and did that offended donkey snort dogs do. I should have listened to the dog. The next morning, I'm on my couch, scrolling my phone while Ranger assassinates one of my socks when I see it. A photo of Seth staring out a coffee shop window, hand under his chin in the classic thinking about life pose. Caption: "Sometimes you outgrow people. Choose yourself. Growth. Moving forward. Know your worth." It had 30 likes, 2 from friends I'd met twice, 1 from some guy whose profile was all gym mirror selfies and quotes stapled to his abs. I stared at it. My hands went cold before my face did. Then I typed one word in the comments: truth. And I blocked him. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "We need to talk," he texted. I called. He launched straight in. He'd been reevaluating the last 2 days. My layoff had made him realize we weren't aligned. He was moving up at his firm and needed someone on his level. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. "So you're dumping me because my main contractor paused jobs for a few weeks," I said. "No," he replied. "I'm ending things because this showed me you don't have drive." Me, the woman with a shop lease, 2 scissor lifts, and a spreadsheet that sleeps under her pillow. "Copy that," I said. "I'll box your stuff. You can pick it up Sunday, 3 to 5. Don't come early or late." After I hung up, I stared at the wall for a solid minute. Then I got to work. I walked through my house and collected everything with his fingerprint on it: razor, cologne, hoodie in my closet, a drawer full of skincare bottles that could have bought Ranger a gold collar. I packed it all into a clear bin and labeled it Seth. I changed the smart lock code, removed him from my Wi-Fi, streaming accounts, anything he could use to wander back in digitally. I emailed Kara to pause the prenup draft and close the file. I sent the text. "Hi, your things are boxed. Sunday 3 to 5 p.m. I'll be here. After that, I'll donate. Please don't come early or late. Thanks." Sunday, 3:02 p.m. He stepped out of his car in a coat that pretended to be a hug and stared at my porch like it had keyed his paint. My best friend Drew leaned against my truck, arms crossed, expression that read, "I will eat a filing cabinet if required." Seth stopped at the bottom step. "I didn't expect you to." He gestured at the box by the door. "You said you were out," I said. I respected that. Behind me, Drew coughed. Could have been a laugh. Could have been tectonic activity. Seth exhaled, geared up. "We can still be friends," he said. "I just needed time to figure myself out. You're such a good—" "You made your choice," I said, clean and flat. His face flickered, confusion, then annoyance. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. I reacted once. He planted a hand on his hip like we stood in a courtroom he invented. "You didn't have to make this ugly." I made it clear. He took a step up. I didn't move, but I filled the space. He stopped. The box sat between us like a verdict. "What happened to you?" he asked, voice soft. Dangerous. "You used to be kind." "I still am," I said. "I'm just done being convenient." Across the glass, Drew mouthed one word. Cold. "Calculated," I replied, and closed the door. The latch clicked like a period. I didn't know it yet, but that sound was the starting gun for the life I actually wanted. Monday morning, I did what I always do when life kicks in a door. I went into hustle mode. Grief could wait. Rage could wait. The electric bill could not. I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee gone lukewarm and opened my laptop. Ranger sprawled at my feet, his head on my boot like he was making sure I didn't float away. First, I pulled up my client list, 30 past customers who liked me enough to hand my number to their neighbors. I drafted an email. Hey, it's Nora from North Rim Electric. This month, I'm waiving the service fee on panel inspections and upgrades. If your lights are flickering, your breakers are tripping, or you're thinking about EV charging, now's a good time. Nora. Simple, clear, no desperation, just opportunity. I scheduled it to send in batches. Then I posted a quick ad for EV charger installs with a clean graphic and easy pricing. While that spun up in the background, my phone buzzed. An email notification slid down from the top of the screen. From Summit Design and Build, Recruitment. I frowned, I knew the name. Last year, Granite Works made me do this awkward trade show booth collab. With a design-build startup that specialized in smart homes. They'd filmed some promo video. I'd stood in a hard hat and talked about clean conduit runs while trying not to swear on camera. At the time, the CEO had stuck in my head more than the cameras. Jensen Hart. Sharp suit, sharper questions. The kind of man who read spec sheets like other people read mystery novels. I'd watched him quiz vendors and realized he actually understood what they were selling. Now his company was in my inbox. I opened the email. They'd just landed funding. They were expanding fast. They were looking for a senior project lead who could manage crews, talk tech with clients, and not melt down the first time a schedule slipped. A recruiter had my information from that trade show video and wanted to know if I'd be open to a conversation. Ranger, I said softly, we might be upgrading. He wagged his tail twice, non-committal but supportive. I stared at the email for a long 5 seconds. The way you stare at a breaker, you're 90% sure is off. Then I hit reply. I expected a wall of HR forms first, a personality test, maybe 3 Zoom calls where someone with a script asked, "Tell me about a time you overcame a challenge," and pretended they were listening. Instead, I walked into Summit's glass-walled conference room 2 weeks later and found one person at the table. Jensen. Up close, he looked less like a LinkedIn headshot and more like a real human who hadn't slept enough but was too stubborn to admit it. Dark suit, tie slightly loosened, sleeves rolled just enough to say, "I work, not I pose." "Nora," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Good to finally get you in here without a camera crew." I laughed despite myself. I'm still traumatized by that mic pack. The tension left my shoulders an inch. On the table lay project plans, a laptop, and a yellow legal pad with Nora White, Field Brain, scribbled at the top. We talked. Not about where I see myself in 5 years, but about how many fixtures you could realistically hang in a day with a 3-person crew and a scissor lift. About what made inspectors smile versus what made them write novels on the correction sheet. About how many times I'd seen a value engineering decision make everything more expensive. He didn't nod like he was waiting for me to stop talking. He took notes, asked follow-up questions, pushed back when something didn't track. He didn't care where I saw myself in 5 years. He cared if I knew what happened when a designer drew something that looked cool and physically could not be installed. At some point, I pulled up my spreadsheet, the one where I'd nerded out and tracked average hours per fixture type across 10 projects. His eyebrows rose, just slightly. "You did this for yourself?" he asked. "For my sanity," I said. "Guess it doubles as data." A corner of his mouth tilted. "I like receipts." "Me too," I said quietly. "Receipts don't lie." 2 hours later, my throat was dry and my head was buzzing, but not in a bad way. Jensen closed the laptop, steepled his fingers, and looked at me for a long second like he was lining up a cut. "I need someone who solves problems without drama," he said finally. "You strike me as a no-drama person." "I like when lights work and inspectors nod once," I said. Something like amusement flickered over his face. "Good," he replied. "That's basically our mission statement." The offer came the next day. $140,000 base, a $600 monthly truck allowance, company phone, 10% bonus based on project margins. And this part made me sit down at my kitchen table, a structure where North Rim Electric could keep running. Drew could handle service calls as my lead tech. For bigger work, Summit's procurement team could include North Rim on the normal bid list when it made sense. Legal would wall me off from vendor selection or pricing on any job we touched. Another PM would control that scope, and I'd recuse in writing. It was a unicorn, a stable paycheck, benefits, and a way to keep my company alive without burning myself down to the copper. I read the offer 3 times, then called Kara. She went through every line like she was cross-examining a hostile witness. When she was done, she said, "This is solid, Nora. If Jensen's half as competent as this paper, you'd be an idiot not to sign." So I signed. "Fresh start," I told Ranger, scratching behind his ears. "New breaker panel for our life." He licked my hand. I took that as board approval. Day 1 at Summit, my shoulders dropped 2 inches the moment I walked into the warehouse. Everything was labeled, racks straight, inventory software actually used, instead of being a myth HR mentioned. The warehouse manager, Mac, moved like a man who hadn't lost a barcode since the Obama administration. The project managers weren't the "I wear stress like a backpack and throw it at you" type. They cracked dry jokes, shared information, and didn't pretend panic was a leadership style. Jensen ran the morning meeting like a math problem with a personality. He listened when people pushed back on timelines. He adjusted. He didn't punish reality. It was disorienting, in a good way, like stepping off a noisy job site straight into a room where everything made sense. We clicked professionally fast. He'd swing by my desk to ask, "If we move this rough in by 2 days, what breaks?" I'd bring him change orders with notes like, "If we don't price this right, we'll be paying them to work." He grabbed coffee between meetings because he wanted to pick my field brain. "If you want buy-in from the crews," I told him one afternoon, "you show up with donuts, not the jelly ones. Those start HR incidents. And then you ask, what's going to break first, and actually listen." He laughed. Not the polite kind people use in conference rooms. The short, caught-off-guard kind. "You're dangerous," he said. "We might have to put you in charge of morale." "Only if I get a donut budget," I answered. 6 weeks in, we stayed late building a master schedule for a medical clinic. At 8:45 p.m., the office was quiet, just the hum of the HVAC and the blue glow of our screens. "You eaten?" he asked suddenly. "I will eat the drywall, if not," I said. "Please don't eat my building," he replied mildly. "There's a Thai place still open. Let me order something before you start chewing baseboards." We ended up at a corner table, both of us still half in work mode, project plans stacked between us like a buffer. Eventually, we pushed the drawings aside and talked about anything but conduits. His divorce 2 years ago. My ex-fiancé who turned me into a coffee shop caption. He shook his head. "People really break up with small business owners over temporary slowdowns?" "Oh, he didn't break up over the slowdown," I said, tracing the condensation on my glass. "He broke up over what the slowdown revealed about me not being his walking ATM." Jensen's gaze warmed, just a fraction. "Good to know we're aligned then. I tend to prefer employees who aren't trying to date the company's credit line." Silence settled, but it wasn't awkward. It was breathable. On the walk back to our cars, cold air biting my cheeks, he glanced over. "This was nice," he said. "Maybe again sometime when we're not surrounded by conduit." "Deal," I said. I drove home with the strange, steady feeling that I'd just stepped into a life where I didn't have to shrink anything to make someone else feel comfortable. From there, we were careful. No PDA at work, no lingering touches in hallways. 2 adults who knew where the lines were and stayed inside them. People gossip no matter what, but when your schedules are clean and your projects hit their dates, gossip gets bored and walks away. 2 months in, Summit announced a holiday gala. Black tie, clients and investors. Downtown venue that probably smelled like new carpet and expensive anxiety. At dinner the week before, Jensen slid a folded program across the table between bites of takeout. "So," he said, tone casual, but eyes not, "we have this event. I need someone who can explain to investors why our electrical timelines don't slip even when everyone else is due." "I can make a PowerPoint," I said. "I was thinking," he cut in, "more like a date." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "People will talk," I said. "People always talk," he replied, calm. "We have HR. We have documented timelines. We have you hired before we ever shared a Thai curry. We're adults, Nora." He held my gaze, not challenging, just steady. The old me, the one who bent to keep the peace, would have backed away. Worried more about appearances than reality. The version who closed a door on her porch and let the latch click like a period thought about it for a breath. Then I nodded. "Okay, I'll be your date." Something eased in his shoulders, like he'd been holding tension he hadn't admitted to. "It'll be fun," he said lightly. "Worst case scenario, the shrimp appetizers are terrible and we leave early. Best case, I thought, We walk in together, and I finally see what it looks like to stand next to someone who's not ashamed of me or threatened by me. 2 days before the gala, my phone pinged. LinkedIn. New message from Seth H. Hey, hope you're doing okay. Been thinking about you. My stomach didn't twist. It didn't do anything at all. I just stared at the screen, then clicked the 3 dots and hit ignore. The next day, another message. Heard you found a new job. That's great. Maybe we could grab coffee and catch up. The answer to coffee with someone who turns you into content is no. I ignored that one too. I had a gala to get ready for, and an entirely different life walking toward me in a navy suit. Gala night, a public ambush, and the email titled Ethical Concerns. Gala night landed like a scene from a life I never thought I'd be part of. Not the life Seth once imagined for me, some polished accessory to his curated Instagram feed, but the one I built brick by brick, breaker by breaker. I pulled on a navy suit that made me look like I had rewired the courthouse and then billed them fairly. Clean lines, sharp shoulders. Nothing dramatic, but everything intentional. Ranger watched me from the hallway, tail thumping once, as if giving silent approval. Hold down the fort, I told him, locking the door. He yawned in agreement. The venue was downtown, one of those ballrooms where the lights pretend to be stars, and the carpet smells like nerves and money. A string quartet played something that felt expensive. Servers passed trays of appetizers that tasted like ambition disguised as food. I stuck to sparkling water. Gala nights and alcohol don't mix when your brain prefers on-off switches. And then Jensen walked in. Black suit, crisp lines, just enough confidence to be noticeable, but not enough to be loud. He scanned the room, saw me, and the look that passed over his face. It wasn't dramatic, but it was something. Steady, present, intentional. Nora, he greeted, voice low enough to cut through the noise. You clean up well. So do you, I replied. He offered his arm, subtle, casual, and I slipped my hand into the crook of his elbow. A quiet statement in a room full of people who made statements for a living. We mingled, investors, engineers, a man who made cable trays for fun. I answered questions about timelines, inspections, smart home integration. Jensen occasionally leaned in with a comment or quick joke, but never overshadowed me. Never corrected, never performed. Then, that prickling sensation, like someone staring at the back of your neck with intent. I turned. Across the ballroom, in a red dress that screamed more desperation than glamour, stood Seth. And he looked like someone had thrown a wrench through his expectations and hit every gear on the way down. His eyes went wide, then narrow, then calculating. Because this wasn't the version of me he'd predicted. Not a sad ex, not a wilted narrative he could recycle in a group chat, but a woman who'd landed on her feet, in better shoes. He moved toward us. Jensen felt me stiffen before I spoke. That alone told me more about him than weeks of conversation. Was that him? Jensen murmured quietly. Yep, I said, voice flat. Copy, he replied. We follow your lead. My heartbeat slowed back to normal. Seth arrived with a smile stretched thin enough to snap. Nora, he said too loudly, slicing through the room. Wow, I didn't expect to see you here. I kept my face neutral. Good evening, Seth. His gaze flicked to Jensen. Oh, hi, I'm, Seth. I'm an old friend. Jensen's expression didn't shift. Jensen Hart, he said politely. I'm Nora's boyfriend and her boss. Seth blinked, hard. Boyfriend and boss? He attempted, voice pitching upward in disbelief. That's fast, don't you think? I didn't even blink. About as fast as you posting that sometimes you outgrow people caption 2 days after my contractor paused work, I said calmly. You seem to have moved on quickly, too. His face flushed. Red, then white, then blotched. That's not fair, he snapped. I was going through things. You know that. No, I said. What I know is you called my temporary slowdown a lack of drive. Then you turned me into a coffee shop life lesson. His jaw clenched. People were listening now. Investors, vendors, a photographer pretending not to eavesdrop. Jensen's hand slid gently, subtly over mine in a grounding way. Not possessive, protective. Excuse us, Jensen said smoothly. We have some investors to meet. We walked away, leaving Seth frozen like an app that crashed mid-scroll. An hour later, Jensen and I were tucked into a quieter corner, sipping water and laughing about a contractor who insisted gravity was optional. Then the night shifted. At midnight, my phone started buzzing with the chaos of a fire alarm. DMs, Instagram, LinkedIn, email, a text from an unknown number. Seth had apparently discovered panic as a lifestyle. We need to talk. That was awkward. Can we be adults? I miss you. I made a mistake. Your boss? Seriously? People will think you slept your way into that job. My stomach didn't flip. It didn't drop. It just cooled. I showed Jensen. We were back at his place by then, still in gala clothes, sitting on the floor while his golden retriever, Moose, snored between us. Jensen read the messages, expression calm, not angry, not rattled, just decisive. Block everything, he said. And if he reaches out at work, that's harassment. Document it. So I did. Screenshots, timestamps, folders sorted by date. Receipts, Uncle Ron would have said. Monday morning, our office manager, Grace, pulled me aside with a face caught between confused and annoyed. Hey, did someone named Seth try to contact you this weekend? I sighed. Yes, my ex. Well, she said, he called the office number Saturday morning, claiming it was a family emergency. When I told him we don't provide employee information, he got aggressive. I wrote it down. She handed me a sticky note. Document everything. Already on it. Tuesday morning, my old coworker Cal texted, Dude, Seth is telling people you got fired for misconduct, and now you're manipulating an older woman to hire you. Just a heads up. It's messy. I called instantly. Cal, I wasn't fired, and Jensen is 3 years older than me. Not 20. Yeah, I told him he was being wild, Cal said. He's on some kind of campaign. Another screenshot, another timestamp, another piece of a puzzle that was starting to look like a restraining order in the making. It escalated Wednesday. An email landed in my inbox. And Jensen's. And HR's. Subject line, ethical concerns. It was a masterpiece of corporate jargon, written by someone who had discovered business buzzwords and weaponized them. I have concerns about the relationship between employee Nora White and CEO Jensen Hart. This is a clear conflict of interest. It appears to involve favoritism and possibly began before her employment. Timeline's wrong. Assumptions loud. Font smug. I forwarded everything to Kara, then to HR. HR called me in Thursday morning. We received a complaint, they said gently. Can you walk us through your relationship? I walked them through everything. Calm, professional, with receipts. This began after employment, I said. There's no favoritism. Jensen's not on my approval chain. I have documentation of harassment if needed. Their relief was visible. You're fine, Nor, HR said. We'll file this. If it continues, there will be legal action. That afternoon, Jensen received a cease and desist letter from a cheap online lawyer representing Seth. It accused him of interfering with prospective economic advantage and emotional destabilization. Kara read the letter and snorted, then drafted a response that politely and legally obliterated it. 3 days passed quietly. Then Friday night, I was chopping onions in Jensen's kitchen while Moose sat guard at my feet. Unknown number, I answered, thinking it was another spam warranty. Nora, Seth's voice, shaky. You ruined my life. I didn't respond. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Brandon broke up with me. Brandon? I echoed, deadpan. My boyfriend, he snapped. He said I'm obsessed with you. I blinked slowly, about the only reaction I had left to give. You paraded that man around to make me look stupid, he said. He's just using you. He wants a younger woman. I exhaled. Seth, I said, goodbye. Click, block, screenshot, folder. Jensen didn't look up from setting plates. Done? He asked. Very, I said. We ate stir-fry like nothing had happened, because nothing of value had. A week later, Seth made a burner Instagram account and posted a dramatic paragraph about narcissistic women who use successful men as props. He tagged Summit's account, not me, but close enough. Legal flagged it instantly, sent another letter, with restraining order language this time. The burner went private, then silent. But he wasn't done, not yet. This was a man who mistook attention withdrawal for personal assault. And the next escalation would push me from screenshots to action. 3 weeks of silence from Seth felt almost suspicious. I'd seen this pattern before, in relationships, in clients, in half-wired breakers. The quiet before the next flicker. The pause before the next surge. I used it wisely. I reinforced every boundary in my life like I was adding conduit around my routines. Updated passwords. Installed a driveway camera with a new angle. Opened a new P.O. box for business mail. Moved part of my emergency fund into a high-yield savings account. Only I could touch. Reviewed my will. Made sure Drew would get Ranger. My dad the tools. It wasn't paranoia. It was insulation. Uncle Ron would have been proud. I went back to life. Work. Schedules, coffee, dogs, a partner who didn't need fixing and didn't expect me to shrink. Summit promoted me to lead electrical project manager after an independent evaluation. No favoritism, no whispers, just margins tight enough to make accountants smile and inspections that passed on the first visit. North Rim Electric kept steady business, service calls, a contract maintaining emergency lighting for retail spaces, clean invoices, clean checks. I was doing what Seth never understood, building something that lasted. But of course, quiet never lasts. Not with people like him. The driveway ping. One evening, 7:42 p.m., I pulled into my neighborhood after a long service call. The sky was pale gray. The air smelled like rain and metal. My phone buzzed. Ring camera alert. Motion at front door. I glanced down and froze. It was Seth, standing on my porch, holding a folder, like he'd come to serve me a plot twist I didn't order. Ranger let out a single bark in the cab of the truck. The alert bark, not the playful one. I parked on the street, took a breath, and called Drew. "Stay on the line," I said. He didn't ask why. Didn't need to. "Pocket me," he said. "I'm your guardian angel with biceps." I walked toward my house slowly, boots crunching on the gravel. Stopped 8 feet away, right at the line on the walkway where my camera angle switched. Boundaries are easier when you can literally see the line. "Seth," I said, "you need to leave." He turned, eyes wide and frantic in a way I had seen once before. The morning he'd accused a barista of charging him extra for almond milk just because she didn't flirt back. "Nora, we need to talk." No. Firm, grounded, quiet. "Put that down," I nodded toward the folder, "and step away." He didn't move. His voice went shaky but manipulative underneath. "You owe me a conversation." "I owe you nothing," I said. "You ended it." He took a small step toward the porch. I blocked him with just my body, calm, unmoved. "Do not step up here," I said. "This is your only warning." My tone never cracked. Drew's muffled voice in my pocket whispered, "Yes, that's how a boundary sounds." Seth faltered, then shoved the folder onto the porch like a dropped accusation. "This isn't over," he snapped. "It is," I said, "legally if needed." He stormed off. I watched until he was out of frame, then retrieved the folder using 2 fingers like it was toxic waste. Inside were printed screenshots of the gala photos, me and Jensen walking in, laughing, clinking glasses. Seth had scribbled across them, "How could you and you ruined everything?" If I had any doubts before, they evaporated. I bagged the pages, labeled the bag evidence, and put it on my desk. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order. Not from fear, from clarity. This was escalation, not confusion. I built a precise timeline: breakup, caption, harassment, office call, anonymous email, burner accounts, midnight messages, and the porch visit. The judge read through it for about 6 minutes, then said, "Temporary order granted." Just like that, clean, quiet, irreversible. Seth was barred from contacting me, my family, my job, or Jensen. If he crossed state lines, it followed him. The order had full faith and credit. He violated it once, a single text from a new number. "We can talk when you calm down." I forwarded it to Kara. She forwarded it to the clerk. A sheriff made a warning call. He went silent after that. People like Seth don't stop because they understand. They stop because consequences speak louder than pity. 6 months later, life didn't snap back. It rebuilt slowly and deliberately, like rewiring a house, one clean circuit at a time. I led 3 builds for Summit: a pediatric clinic with whisper-quiet lighting, a coffee roastery that smelled like ambition, a tech office that insisted on neon backlighting like a teenage gamer cave. My crews trusted me because I never left them guessing. I showed up with wire nuts in every size and coffee strong enough to raise the dead. Jensen recused himself fully from my reviews. Another PM handled my performance evaluation. I got the raise anyway. Math doesn't gossip. What he never understood. I fixed my baseboards, installed motion sensor nightlights, painted the den, corrected 2 outlets installed upside down by someone who had apparently been fighting gravity. I bought Ranger a new dog door with a lock sturdy enough to stop a bear. He approved. He also met Jensen's golden retriever, Moose. The 2 of them now run laps until the grass considers unionizing. My parents met Jensen. Mom baked brownies. Dad asked his favorite screwdriver brand. "Klein," Jensen said. Dad nodded. "Smart man." I don't think Seth ever asked me what brand I preferred. He asked what color would look good in a flat lay. The last update. Seth moved to another city, according to an apologetic DM from his former roommate. New job, new apartment, same emotional chaos. His burner accounts went silent. Kay, his enabler friend, posted vague quotes about men fearing strong women. which was ironic considering Seth feared a spreadsheet more than taxes. Brandon, the rebound boyfriend, moved on to a nutrition coach with no dog hair on her clothes. The world kept spinning. And me? I kept building. Projects, business, a life with structure and laughter, a home that smelled like coffee and solder, a dog who thinks I'm the CEO of Fetch, a partner who respects the work I do and doesn't shrink from my competence. One morning, sitting at Jensen's kitchen table with sunlight hitting the hardwood just right,